Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm the King, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we are going to be doing a tier list, but something that we haven't actually done before. Today's video is going to be a Mori tier list. I'm going to give you guys my subjective opinion on what characters I think in DBD have some of the best Moris. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and jump on into this tier list. We got a lot of characters to talk about, so we're going to start off with the Trapper. Now, the Trapper has one of the more OG kind of Mori styles that a lot of people have been asking to get reworked. And the reason they've been asking for this to get reworked is because it's not necessarily the best Mori that we've seen. The animation is very old and it's very simplistic. Even though that I'm a Trapper main and I absolutely love the Trapper, I can't score his Mori high. It's just a little bit too plain to me. He is the first killer in the game and his Mori just isn't there. And for that reason, I have to put the Trapper's Mori in the D tier. I wish they would rework these Moris or even make it so that in the Rift paths we can get Moris for every killer that they can use globally. I think that would be a really good improvement, but we'll have to wait and see if they ever do that. Next on the list is the Twin. Now, the Twins are the most recent character to come on into the game, contrary of the Trapper, and they have two Moris at that. They have some really awesome Moris, and the first version is with Victor and the second version is without Victor, and both of them are pretty equally gruesome. They are really nice Moris. And as you guys seen them on screen right there, I'm gonna have to put them in the A tier. And the reason I'm putting them in the A tier is because not only do they have one, but they have two Moris. It still shows a very graphic scene, and I don't know, I just like the Mori for both of them. And especially since they're two and you can have a variation of it, I think it's really damn awesome. Next up on the list, we have the Doctor. Now, the Doctor was one of those Moris that I remember that was the first one where I was like, whoa, this is really damn cool. Doctor being one of the earlier DLCs that came out in the game, I was like, this Mori is pretty damn amazing. Obviously, for those of you guys that don't remember or you're seeing on screen, he rubs his hands together, he shocks his victim, and then turns them over, and you can see their eyes frying out. Very graphic, very gruesome. And I very much like it. However, when compared to some of the other killers, he may fall a little bit short. Even though I absolutely love his Mori, I feel like it only deserves to be in the B tier. I would gladly put him up a little bit higher, but I feel like some of the other killers just have a better Mori than him, and more to it than just what he has. But I still absolutely love his Mori, and for that reason, I'm putting him in the B tier. The next killer on our list is Pyramid Head. Now, Pyramid Head doesn't necessarily have two Moris, but he does have two finishing moves. It's not necessarily a Mori, it's more of just an in-base power, but we're still going to count it on this list as technically a Mori, because it's a completely separate animation, even though you don't have to bring the Mori in. On top of this, he has probably one of the coolest Moris in the game, hands down. I just absolutely love it, and the amount of representation that it has to the Silent Hill factor and everything like that, I think this is just one of the best Moris in the game. It's graphic, it's amazing, it's unique. You know, for most killers, what we see is just them using their weapon, and that's pretty much it. For him, he spawns like a complete new entity to get his Mori done, which I think is super unique and super interesting and just amazing all around. And I'm going to have to put his Mori in the S tier. And this isn't even talking about his final judgment. Again, I know I said I'll include it, and because he has that second ability as well to use a different variation, I think that's pretty damn awesome too. And for that reason, he's in the S tier. Next on the list is the Piggy. Now, the Piggy has a decent Mori. I remember when the pig just came out, I was like, wow, her Mori is pretty gruesome. She stabs you in the arm and then looks at you and slashes you in the neck. Very quick, very subtle, and very clean. I like it about her. But if we're judging this, and the way I'm judging this is how gruesome it is and how powerful it is, I think for the pig, she's just a little bit too clean for me. And for that reason, I'm gonna have to put her in the C tier. I'm looking for a lot of gore and something that's really gruesome, that really shows that, hey, I killed this survivor. For the pig, she's more like a sneaky assassin, which I absolutely love, don't get me wrong. but when compared up on this list, I think she belongs in the C tier. And look at that, we have a character for every single tier as we're going down, so that's pretty cool. As we move on to the Demogorgon. Now, the Demogorgon was another licensed character, and the potential for the Demogorgon's Mori was limitless until they had the idea of decapitating survivors. Now, obviously, we cannot decapitate survivors because that kind of thing would be censored in certain cultures and certain regions around the world, but that is what it potentially was going to be. Instead, we got something pretty similar, just without the decapitation part, where the Demogorgon basically eats the head of someone, and their head stays on, he murders them, and then they carry on. I'm going to put Mr. Demogorgon in the A tier. I think for a licensed character, seeing them perform their move is really unique, and having the Demogorgon literally gnaw on someone's head and then give out a big roar is really interesting and dynamic, and I love it. I'm gonna put it in the A tier because I think it's so awesome. Moving on the list, we have the Oni. Ooh, I love the Oni. I absolutely love the Oni's Mori, and I still have a video of my initial reaction to his Mori, and I think this is one of the best Moris that we have in the game because of how gruesome it is and how much rage he's filled with. He just comes out, rips your tongue out, and then smacks you down with the hammer multiple times. It's just an absolutely devastating Mori, and for that reason, I have to put the Oni in the S tier with Pyramid Head. I just think he has one of the best Moris in the game. It is so gruesome and so brutal that it just stands out to me. I'm one of those Moris that you're like, oh my goodness. So for that reason, he's in the S tier. I also didn't make this disclaimer at the beginning, but remember, this is subjective. You may not agree with me with this. I'm going to talk about your favorite killer as well, and you might think that their Mori is the best. Again, 100% subjective. There's no right or wrong with this. Moving on, we have the Hag, and Hag, as we know in her lore, she is a cannibal, and I think that her Mori is super unique, especially for a character that's been in the game for such a long time. Just ripping the guts out of someone and then gnawing on it is just so devastating and so gruesome. I'm gonna have to put her in the A tier. I just think that that is such a fun and unique Mori that I just gotta show some love to it. It is so amazing to think that they made a Mori like this very early on, when some of the other early on characters, they just have a lackluster kind of Mori, which is just kind of average, with just like, you know, smacking their weapon around. But for her, it took it to a completely different level, and for that reason, she's in the A tier. Next on the list is the Plague. Now, the Plague, as you guys know, she holds up her victim and she vomits on them. You can have two different versions of this with the different colors of puke, but they're pretty much the same animation. And I like this one. I don't think it really stands out in my mind as like an amazing Mori. It's just more of an average one where she just vomits on you and then smacks you back down. For that reason, we're going to put her in the C tier. It's definitely interesting, but it doesn't really stand out to me as a Mori that I'm like, wow, that is amazing. Next on the list is the Deathslinger. Now, Deathslinger, I remember seeing Deathslinger's Mori. It was pretty damn amazing. In fact, I remember we Mori Toki. That was a lot of fun. The Deathslinger's Mori is definitely an interesting one because it's the first time we've ever seen a gun used in Dead by Daylight. And this had a lot of potential, and I think what we got was really damn good. It was very graphic, it was very gruesome, and we got to see a different camera angle for one of the first times ever. Other characters did have different camera angles, but this one was like up close and personal when he holds you up. I think this was a really awesome and gruesome Mori. I don't think it's at the caliber at some of the other ones on the list, and for that reason we're going to put him in the B tier, but I still think it's a really nice and amazing Mori. Next on the list, my friends, is Leatherface, an iconic killer in its own right, a cannibal as well, just like the Hag, and his Mori is very gruesome. He literally knocks you down on the back of the head, takes his chainsaw out, shoves it in your back, and rips you in half, and then gives a nice good old victory chant. How can we not love Bubba's Mori? It is absolutely amazing, and I have to put him in the A tier. It's just such a good Mori, especially again for being one of the earlier characters in the game and being so unique and dynamic. Normally with the newer killers that we get now, we're like, yeah, their Mori is really awesome. So we're gonna have to put him on in the A tier. Next on the list is Freddy, and Freddy is also a licensed and iconic killer. But I always found that Freddy's Mori was just a little bit lackluster. You know, iconic in its own right, he stabs you straight through the chest and then you fall down and he gives this little, hand movement thing. And then he carries on. It's a fast Mori, it's a clean Mori. It's similar to the pig, where I think it's just something that's there to be like a clean assassin and you move on. And for that reason, I'm going to put him in the C tier right next to all of these other guys who have decent Moris, but just doesn't stand out to that caliber to me. Next on the list is the Wraith. And Wraith was one of the OG characters as well, one of the first three. And just like the first three and all of them, they pretty much have the same Mori. He pulls you by the leg, which is a little bit more dynamic than Trapper, but still just smacks you down, smacks you down, smacks you down, and that's pretty much it. There really isn't much else to it, and for that reason, I'm going to have to put him in the D tier. It's just not something that stands out to me as much as some of these other characters, so for that reason, he's going to be down there. And maybe towards the future one day, we'll actually get to see these Moris being changed and being reworked, and maybe they'll be much better than what we have today. But until then, he's going to have to be down there in the D tier. Moving on the list, we have the Huntress. I absolutely love the Huntress's Moris. I think this is one of the earlier versions of Moris that I just really was drawn to. She smacks you down with the hatchet and then keeps on hitting you with the axe, or with the axe, not the hatchet, you know what I mean. She smacks you, and just when you think she's done and she pulls it out, she smacks you a couple more times. This was one of my favorite Moris, and it will always be one of my favorite Moris. And you guys might not agree with this, but I'm going to put the Huntress's Mori in the S tier. I just absolutely love it. I just think it's so awesome. It may not be the most unique, but it's still so gruesome and so powerful that I just love it so much. Next on the list is the Hillbilly, and as I said just about the Wraith, Hillbilly was one of the first three OG characters, and although his was a little bit different than the other two, actually using his secondary weapon, it was still pretty basic, with just chainsawing someone in the back, which I found super lackluster, considering you're hitting people with a chainsaw all the time. Unlike Bubba's, where you literally cut someone in half, his, you just kind of push it in their back, which is the same thing that you typically do in a regular match. So for that reason, it's in the D tier. Moving on the list to the Clown. Now, the Clown has a very interesting Mori. When his Mori just came out, we didn't really have too much to go off of because they were missing one sound file. Now, one sound file made a very big difference because it looked like he just stepped on your head, and that was it, and then he just cut off your finger and you were dead. Then we realized that with all that weight that he has, he actually crushes your skull and you die. Then he cuts off your finger, tastes it, and then puts it away. Very disgusting, to say the least. But still, I feel like this was one of the Moris that was just kind of meh. It wasn't really something that was like, oh my god, that's crazy. It was just a little bit more weird, if I'm honest. For that reason, we're gonna have to put Mr. Clown in the C tier. I just don't vibe with that Mori too well. That's just me, though. That's just me. Next on the list, as we're getting down to the bottom, is Myers. And we know how iconic Michael Myers is. If you watch his movies, you know what he does. And his Mori in the game is pretty damn simple. He grabs you, he puts his knife in you, pulls it out of him, pushes it more in, and then he just tosses your corpse down. Very clean, super classic, just like Myers in the movies. And I think the devs did a really good job in this one, and for that reason, I'm putting it in the A tier. Now, it is simplistic, just like Freddy and just like the pig, but just because how iconic and good it looks, I have to put it in the A tier. It still has that aspect of gore and just dominant presence when he stabs you twice and then tosses your corpse like nothing. I think it's really awesome to have an animation like that. So that's where we're going to be putting him, in the A tier. Next on the list is the Spirit. Now, the Spirit is one of those killers that has a pretty damn good Mori as well. She basically hits you, and then hits you again, and then hits you again, and then hits you again with all that rage, and then gives a good old wah into the camera. I really do like her Mori. I do. But I still think it's a little bit more basic when compared to the guys in the S and the A tier. And I feel like it doesn't really belong to be in the C tier with some of those characters because it's still a really nice Mori. So for that reason, we're going to be putting her on in the B tier. She does have a good Mori. She does have a good Mori. I just don't think it's, in my opinion, S or A tier quality. Moving on the list, we have the Blight, one of the newer characters to come on into the game. And the Blight has a pretty interesting Mori where he injects the bottle of serum into you and you just kind of die. It's pretty interesting, but the entire Blight chapter in itself just felt to me like something that was just put out there really, really quickly. And maybe it was because we were teased about the Blight for such a long time that I didn't really feel a major connection to him. I love the character, I love the design, and I love the gameplay of him, but everything else was just kind of meh, including the Mori. It wasn't something that I was too fond about. It was still definitely dynamic and interesting, so for that reason I'm going to put him in the C tier, but it just didn't stand out to me as something that was so gruesome and so crazy. It was just his serum going into you, and that's pretty much it. Next on the list is the iconic Ghostface with a Mori like we've never seen before, where he literally stabs you down, pulls out a camera, takes a picture at you, looks at it, and then carries on. If this doesn't scream S tier Mori, I don't know what does. This Mori is one of the most dynamic and unique Moris that we have in the game to date, and it's just absolutely amazing. I love the Mori that we have on the Ghostface. It is such a good Mori, that I just can't help but put it into the S tier. It's so good, and I don't care what anybody says, Ghostface Mori is 100% S tier. As we move on now to the final two characters in the game, we have the Nurse. The Nurse was the first free DLC that we received in the game, and she was definitely interesting. She basically gets on top of you, chokes you out, and then covers your eyes, rubs your face. Pretty weird and unique. And then she just carries on by teleporting out and doing her business. Now, I do like this Mori, but I don't think it's as unique and cool as some of these other killers. I think it's just kind of alright. And for that reason, we're going to be putting her on into the C tier. It wasn't something that stood out to me as like, whoa, this is crazy. But it was still something that was better than what we had on the original 3. And I'll cut them some slack on this one because it was the first ever DLC, essentially. So, understandable. It definitely took it up a notch, but it wasn't to the caliber of some of these other characters. And last, we have the Legion. Now, the Legion's Mori is definitely unique. This is the first time we've actually seen the character in a way fight back, and I really enjoyed this Mori on first seeing of this. I remember seeing this and I was like, whoa. And then we also had at this time 2 different variations of it for the survivor and the killer's point of view. I absolutely loved this Mori. It was really, really awesome. Obviously, we did get some more characters later on that, you know, changed a lot of things, but even up to now, the Legion's Mori still holds up to date, and for that reason, I'm going to put him in the B tier. It's definitely not as crazy as some of the other killers that are up there on the A and S tier, but I think that is definitely where he belongs. Probably if we had like B+, he would be in a B+ category. Same with some of these other characters, like in the C tier, like I'd probably put the Blight and maybe the Clown and Freddy in C+, if I did have a C+ tier, but if we had to rank them all, this is where I'd say they would be. Definitely a interesting tier list, different from what we're normally seeing when we rank the killers based on how their power works. But yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure you leave a like down below. Tell me what you think about these Moris. Where would you rank some of these killer Moris? I would definitely love to hear it in the comments down below. And if you guys do enjoy these tier list type of videos, we'll be making some more for you guys. I hope you guys did enjoy. Make sure you come out on Twitch because we'll be live there. We'll be giving out those fruitcake code charms, having some fun with you guys, and having a good old day. Happy holidays, everyone. As always, I'm the King. I tip my crown to you guys, and we'll see you in the fall.